A good common mistake would be to just focus on reducing cost and to not really think about, well, what is our cost getting us?
And what's harder, to teach technical folks financial principles or teach finance folks engineering and technical principles?
I think teaching technical people financial principles is harder. Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do.
Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello everyone, welcome to FinOps in Action. For those of you who follow us for a while already know that I'm particularly intrigued by FinOps people career path. And today's guest has a very, very unique career path. She actually started her career as contamination engineer at NASA. What does that mean? At some point, she moved to sales engineering at Aptio, and from there, the road to FinOps was paved. She was a speaker at FinOps X, Google Next, and many other industry events, and she won the first most impactful instructor award at FinOps X 2022. I'm happy to welcome founder and director of RealOps, Idaliz Baez. Idaliz, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm great. So good to see you. Idaliz, please share us the one thing you got wrong when you started your FinOps career.
Yes. So for me, I definitely used to focus way too much on the money aspect. And also I would look at just like an absolute value. So I would just look at the total dollar amount that was spent. And sometimes you can benefit from looking at that, but it's not always the most beneficial way of taking a look at where your inefficiencies are. So I eventually then moved on to figuring out what are you getting with that money that's being spent and asking for another number instead of just looking at a single number. So total amount of money over how much time, total amount of money spent on what or for what. I also started to take a look more at unit economics instead of just, a single tangible number. What is something worth? What is it providing the team? And I moved from then looking at just that monetary aspect to also then looking at efficiencies. So looking at things other than just the dollar value. So I think that was the biggest mistake I started off with.
I think it's a very common trend now, moving from looking at spend to looking at efficiency. That's how I like to frame it. And I wonder, when you say efficiency, you mentioned things like unit economics and how much I spend on what per what, for example. Are you also referring to efficient use of infrastructure and basically identifying waste, cleaning up waste, preventing waste as well? Is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also take a look at like, how are you architecting your applications? So are they architected in a way that they've actually already kind of been, utilizing things that are more modern, so you're not utilizing something that's actually inefficient or more cost impactful because it's out of date. Because sometimes even just updates and upgrades to your architecture can also help you be more efficient and make you be less wasteful. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And actually, you said something very interesting, because when people usually talk about waste, they talk about analyzing the infrastructure, understand how the infrastructure looks like, how it behave against what I'm using. And you also mentioned looking at the application, the architecture of the application. Are you actually meaning like looking at the code, for example, and stuff like that to find the inefficiencies?
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, looking at the code, or just like looking as well at like, how is it built? So what services are being deployed to use it? Are you utilizing the most efficient services? Are they, up to date? Are they, how is that all kind of strung together? Because that's another way of taking a look at whether or not you are being as efficient as you can be.
Very cool. And where did you get this insight? Was that part of your role as sales engineer at Aptio? Where it all started?
Yeah, I think for me, that one came from just being an engineer. I like to be really hands-on, so I kind of was thinking about, oh, well, there's more to it than just, what are we spending money on? It's also, well, how are we architecting this application? Is that also efficient? Is what what we are deploying, is that making sense? Are we deploying in the right regions? Are we utilizing the right size of an instance? Are we using the right, the right pieces to put the puzzle together in a way that makes sense?
Okay, so you say engineer is an engineer. It doesn't matter if it's contamination engineer at NASA or software engineer at Adobe.
Still an engineer.
Okay, gotcha. And really, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You're not a proper finance practitioner, right? You have your own company. It's called RealOps. Can you share with us what you do at RealOps?
Yeah. So I onboard and train teams that want to pass their FinOps practitioner certification. I also do bespoke trainings as well as FinOps services. So sometimes I am employed to help kind of either ramp up or start a FinOps skill or a FinOps team. Other times I'm there to just help kind of help during a period where they've got a period of growth, or help with, say, they've got tagging policy nightmare that needs to be remediated and they need help with that, or things along those lines. So I have other kind of reasons for being employed outside of just training as well.
Nice, but the focus on training is actually very unique. I'm personally not familiar with anyone else who does something like that.
Yeah, I don't really know if there are very many. I think there used to be a few other training providers, but I think that's kind of fallen to the wayside a bit.
Nice. So you're a unicorn. And Idaliz, how many people have you trained so far?
Over 200.
Wow. Wow. You
Yeah.
need to close the deal with the foundation somehow to get some share of all the certifications.
That would be neat.
Absolutely. So you're focusing on FinOps training. You train over 200 people. What did you learn from training 200 people?
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned a lot, to be fair. So I would say that one of the biggest things I've learned is from like other people's experiences, especially people not coming from the engineering background. So especially listening to somebody from finance or from procurement, hearing their side of the story, hearing what they see, that they see, oh, I just see this big dollar amount and it's attached to AWS or it's attached to our cloud vendor and I don't know what it means. And I'm tasked with, justifying this budget and it doesn't make sense. So hearing those types of stories has really kind of taught me a lot more about FinOps than I ever could have imagined. You learn a lot about, people's priorities because they go in to the course and they clearly want to learn XYZ, right? They are like really focused on, I really want to learn about, rate efficiency, or I really want to learn about my unit economic KPIs or yeah, so I think that you can really learn a lot from these other people's like kind of stories of where they're coming from and why are they joining the FinOps world.
So what did you learn from working with procurement people, for example? And do you have any specific story about an interesting procurement person that maybe taught you something special?
Yeah, procurement is one of my favorites. So I think that they sit in a very unique spot where they are, in charge of kind of talking to those vendors and really kind of making sure that our licenses make sense and that they are aligned with, the demand that we have in an organization. And so I think that they sit in a really interesting space. And so procurement, I think, has taught me, the importance of understanding how your licenses work and understanding, the time frame that you have them. It's like, when are they expiring? What is the cost? Who's actually using them? Are they being utilized? Yes, there's a lot that goes into that, definitely.
Very cool. And I assume when you go to a company, to a person to train him, you get exposed to all the mistakes they're making or all the non-best practices they have in place. What are some of the more common mistakes people do in FinOps?
Hmm. Yeah. So I would say a good common mistake would be to just focus on reducing cost and to not really think about, well, what is our cost getting us? Because it doesn't always have to be a bad thing that our spend is going up if what we're getting in return is well worth it. Um, so sometimes it could just mean that we're actually like we're in a period of growth and that's why we're spending more and it's, there's actually it's a good thing. So I think it's really common. A big common mistake would just be to just focus on, I need to reduce the overall amount of money that is being spent, and that's it. And that's all they focus on, instead of kind of taking a look at, well, what other things can we be measuring? What else is important? What else can we, be improving? What else is out there that we can be taking a look at instead?
Very interesting. And I assume you work out with people who are getting into FinOps for the first time in their lives.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially, when you're doing the course, and, those people tend to be brand new.
Nice. And what tips do you have for people who are now just getting into FinOps?
Talk to as many people as possible. Everybody's very friendly in the community. So my biggest tip is just, share stories, receive stories, just talk to people, ask questions. Yeah, be vocal in the community. There's a lot of really friendly faces.
I have to concur on that. I personally enjoyed it. People are very friendly, very open. And that's how I got a very, very nice start into the FinOps space as well. So +1 for that. And that is, I'm very curious about how you structure the training themselves. Like, are you more focused on the technical parts? You're more focused on the financial parts? Do you do it mixed? Where do you put the focus when you build trainings?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the mix of the audience. So I try to touch on the subjects that are the least comfortable for the audience. So if it's an audience filled with developers, probably focus more on the finance aspects, and then vice versa. So trying to kind of highlight or spend the most time on what is not their forte is, I think, the most important thing. Um, because that's where they can grow the most. That's where they can learn the most. That's like the part that is, more difficult for them to maybe grasp or understand. So we'll spend the most time on that. And that's what I try and do. As much as it might be the most uncomfortable way to run a course, it is the one that is the most beneficial, I think, to the students.
Absolutely. And what's harder, to teach technical folks financial principles or teach finance folks engineering and technical principles?
I think teaching technical people financial principles is
Really?
harder. Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's just like there is just something really difficult sometimes about some of the terminology that finance teams and finance people use. And it is its own little world. I mean, I know that the tech language also, that we've got a lot of acronyms and things like that, but ultimately there are a lot of people that are tech savvy without being technically minded, if that makes sense. So I think that can be a little bit easier than learning the ins and outs of finance, especially OpEx and CapEx and amortization and, all of those kind of words. And you're just like, oh, what does all of this mean and why? So, yeah.
Cool. And do you see some objection to, hey, why do I need it anyway? I'm an engineer.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. And then I explain, like, well, you know what? All of the things that you're doing, they spend money and it costs money, and you kind of need to understand, what does that mean to the business, and, how is that impactful? And you will appreciate understanding these concepts later. Even if at the moment you might think, why am I doing this? Type of thing. Yeah.
Interesting. And it actually raises another question. And I wonder, what is the motivation of companies to send their people to training? And I have a very, very specific thing I would like to understand. So I'm sure there are companies who want certain group of people to start doing FinOps as their main job. So of course they need to know how to do it. But I'm sure there are people who that's not their main job. And I'm curious if companies want to train them as well for awareness and maybe building a common language.
Yes, definitely. I think the common language thing is spot on. That is 100% why a lot of companies will send more than just their core FinOps persona people into a training, because the FinOps team will be working with other teams, like the engineering team, like the finance team. And it's important for those other team members that will be working with FinOps to understand the overall goal, to understand, like you said, to have a common language, to be working towards the same thing. Um, and so I find that is a good motivation for training. I also find that another really good motivation for training is when an organization realizes that they're trying to do FinOps, but they're not actually getting anything done, or it's, nothing's being efficient. Like they realize that they're not getting the results that maybe they should be. Then they turn to training to say, okay, maybe we should just get educated first and then take two, and let's see if we can be more efficient after we're educated.
That's like so trivial, but so not obvious at the same time. Because I think I've spent here like dozens of discussions about how to drive engineering engagement, and people were talking about putting the right data in front of them. And people talked about, the soft skill of how to talk with them. People talked about gamification and how to drive accountability and motivation.
Yeah,
But like no one said the obvious, like you need to give them some training so they will know what they need to do. And even if they already know, it can also raise their awareness.
exactly. Yeah, having some type of baseline is just so helpful. So then you can just be like, oh, okay, now I understand. These are the basics. This is kind of my my baseline, my step one, my step two, and then they can go from there and they can be more advanced later.
Very cool. And just for our audience, Idaliz is not sponsoring this episode. I'm not promoting her because anything. It's just really, really interesting practice. I think all of us should consider. And Idaliz, I'm now thinking about the FinOps practitioner out there. I think starting to think about training and how they can embed training in their FinOps strategy or FinOps program. And how do you look at like getting someone from outside to do the training versus building it in-house? When do you recommend to do either?
Um, yeah, so I think that if there is something very particular, like a really particular problem that a company is facing, or something that's really, really special to the organization, they want to maybe have their own like bespoke training because they want to be able to talk about their environment. They want to be able to like put real world stories behind it, and they want to like really kind of dive deep into a different level. That would make sense. Otherwise, like having a more general, general training with a variety of organizations, will be just fine. But I do recognize that there are some companies that like really want to talk about their issues, and they want to talk about their data, and they want to talk about like, well, in this scenario or just the other week, or and in that case they might want to have their own kind of like private training.
Gotcha. And what's your perspective about grades?
Grades, yeah. Oh yeah. So luckily the exam for the practitioner course is, I think it's like a 75% pass rate. So it's just like it's not too bad. And I don't go through a training course and like give people a grade. Although I should consider it. That would be fun. Uh, Fun for me, probably absolutely terrifying for everybody sitting in on the course. Yeah, so I would say it's not really something to stress about or to worry about.
Okay. Well, so guys, think about grades. If you want to have fun, do grades, give grades to everyone in the company. If not, you can go without grades. That's cool. And guys, I know you're very, very big on data in FinOps and getting the data right and trusting your data. I would love to get some insights from you on how to do it on the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would definitely first want to ensure that you are looking at data that's clean. So making sure that you're not like looking at duplicate data, making sure that you've got like the data from the correct time frame. So both of those are really important. And then taking a look at, well, what am I trying to answer? Um, so that way you're looking at the right data sources. So are you getting data just strictly from your cloud service provider? Do you also need to have data from any other sources? Are there some other like intangible sources that you need to be collecting data from or taking a look at? So really kind of take a look at the whole array of data sources that you might need in order to answer the questions that you're asking on a day-to-day basis from a FinOps perspective. Like, where are we spending the most money? Why is this application costing more than this one? Where can we be more efficient with our deployments, things along those lines, and then taking a look at, okay, well, where are we hosting our applications, and where are we seeing any errors and things like that. So yeah.
And I also feel that sometimes people bind themselves to the out of the box reports they get from the tools they have, and in a way, like force the organization into measuring and tracking what some product manager at some random company decide that you need to look at. Is that something that you see with the people you work with?
Yeah, I think it is. It's really easy, I think, to fall back on just using the out of the box reports. But I definitely always recommend kind of trying to, if possible, like start from scratch and have your own, vision board of all of the important KPIs that you need to be tracking and monitoring, like your costs over time and your cost trends over time and the variances that you're looking at. What thresholds are you trying to maintain? Things like that. And which KPIs are the most important that you really want to have highlighted at the top of the screen so that you can be checking them on a daily basis. And that's not always given in the out of the box reports. So it's not always something that is going to be um, readily available. It might be something that you have to, create yourself. And that's okay.
Interesting. One of the things that I personally see with practitioners out there is that they're leaning more towards reports with the BI tools of the cloud providers, like Power BI, because they want the flexibility, because they want to answer the question that they care about, because they want to see it in the way they like to see it. Is that a trend you're also seeing? Do you feel the world is going that direction?
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I think it's also a comfort factor. I think sometimes it's really comfortable to use what is kind of already given to you. So I think that makes sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as you are making sure that it's answering all of the questions that you need answered. And as long as it's doing that, then that's fine.
And do you feel like it's the FinOps job to get into data hygiene and make sure that all the data is right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's 100% the job of the FinOps person to make sure that your data is clean and it's not being duplicated or it's not, short. You're not missing something. It's not, it's coming in a timely fashion as well. That's definitely all the responsibility of your FinOps team.
Yeah, and I always feel like data is something that doesn't come natural, at least the cloud data doesn't come naturally to nor finance people and nor like classic software developers.
Yeah.
This is, for example, why you have today data engineers.
Yeah.
It's something a bit different. So when you do your training, do you also put more focus on the data?
We do have a little section about data, and we definitely do spend a little bit of time talking about it and talking about like how do you tag your data appropriately? How are you going to kind of make sure that you've got all the data that you need to have the right level of reporting. So we definitely do have a small focus on it. I wouldn't say it's a large focus of the course, but I definitely do think that time is spent on it.
And you see people leaning more towards focus, like the focus framework, not the word focus.
Yeah, I do think people are like excited about focus and trying to implement it and really taking a look at it, which I think is great. I think it's was well needed, and it's definitely nice to see that people are excited to try and bring that into their daily basis.
Very cool. I have to tell you, I'm personally also excited about focus. So it definitely makes sense to me. And I'm sure to many people that listen to us right now. Very nice. This was really, really cool to get into all the training aspects. And I think the training is something you can bring from outside. You can also build in house and take a lot of the principles that you share with us. And I definitely want to learn more about you on the personal level, Idaliz. So first of all, how did you get to becoming a contamination engineer at NASA?
Yes. So I worked at NASA as an intern in my secondary school during the summers, and then I was a co-op. So when I was at university, I would work there during the winter and during the summer. And then when I graduated university, I went full time and was a contamination engineer. And I um don't really know how I found that particular branch. I think I just was placed there. And I'm really thankful that I did. I have some really good friends that still work there, and the biggest project that I worked on was the James Webb Space Telescope, and those mirrors. They were like my babies. They came into the clean room, and I was watching over them and monitoring them, and it was a joy to be a part of that project.
Very cool. And how did you decide to leave NASA?
So I went to go get a master's in engineering management, and I originally thought I was going to go back. But then I took an internship job at a data connectivity company in the pre-sales department, and I just kind of fell in love. So I fell in love with data and technology and pre-sales, and I didn't go back.
Very cool. Very cool. And where do you live today?
Yeah, so I live near London.
Oh, nice. And you're originally from the London area?
No, I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm originally from the Midwest in the United States.
Oh, wow. Wow. So how did you get to England?
Yeah, I moved here for work, although a lot of people will say that that's silly. I moved here for my husband. A little bit of both. Two things can be true. So yeah, I moved here about 7 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Husband plus work, definitely reasonable
Yeah.
reasons to move to a different country.
Mhm.
Cool. And can you share with us what you like to do outside of work?
Yeah, I love board games.
Oh,
Love board games. Yeah. I also, this is very, very nerdy. I'm also in a D&D campaign. So
wow.
I am properly a nerd. Or I'll play video games. Or I love hanging out with my 2 children. So that involves watching child cartoons and coloring and going on walks and swimming.
Cool. And you also have a NASA rocket behind you.
I do, yeah, Saturn V. It's Lego.
It's a Lego one. Wow.
Yeah, it was very fun to put together.
That's massive. Okay, wow. I've never built something that big, honestly. Very cool. Very cool. Um, Great. So, Idaliz, that was really awesome. I'm sure people would love to reach out and ask questions and ask about training. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, just reach out on my LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to do it.
Very cool. I assume people can also visit RealOps.io, the website,
Absolutely.
to read and see more. As you're welcome to do that. Idaliz, I felt like I learned a lot about training, and actually, it opened my mind to the importance of training as another tool in your FinOps toolbox,
Absolutely.
getting people more aware, more engaged, more knowledgeable, and essentially drive outcomes, FinOps outcomes.
Absolutely.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us today, Idaliz.
Thank you for having me.
And I would love once again to thank our audience for joining us, listening in, and following us one episode after another. It's a lot of fun to me. I'm sure to you too. Please tell your friends about the podcast and follow our newsletter. Idaliz, thank you again. This has been another fun, interesting, exciting episode of FinOps in Action. See you next time.
That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with tip detection and remediation tools that drive action.